electricity prices now. Electricity rates in Ontario have risen as of the beginning of the month. It will now cost more than twice as much for electricity during peak demand periods than off-peak periods. Our next guest says electricity rates may keep moving up. To explain why, we're joined by John Kiemele. He's Senior Natural Gas and Electricity Analyst at Enpro International. He joins us right here on Queen Street in Toronto. Thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
Explain to us what has gone on very recently, what increases are headed for consumers.
Well, May 1st, the rate for electricity went up by about 16% during the peak hours of the day, whereas the off-peak hours went up 8%. The mid-peak hours went up 12.2%, and twice a year, May 1st and November 1st, rates are adjusted to small consumers as a result of what's happened in the open market, what contracts the Ontario Power Authority, the IESO, has had with various generators. So this is a result of Ontario Power Generation having put through a request to pass on increased costs, and their contracted rates with the Power Authority have likewise gone up. So these increases have gone through and they've hit the small consumer during the highest use hours of the day.
Where have the costs come from? The extra costs that they're passing on to us? Well,
Ontario Power Generation operates the nuclear facilities and the hydroelectric plants, and they have increases in operating costs all the time.
Right. But I guess my question is it coming from pension costs? Is it coming from, or is it just operating costs are getting?
I'm not sure how their internal structure is presenting these costs. I'm assuming it's just general operation costs.
How much of this comes from the government's push towards solar and wind and the, I'll call them exorbitant contracts that went along with that?
I think those costs have, those projects have led to the cost increases in prior applications. We will see more as more wind turbines and solar contracts are brought to fruition, definitely. At the end of this year, we're going to see a 10% increase in cost to all small consumers when the Ontario Clean Energy Benefit is eliminated. That's going to be a huge pill to swallow for any small business or small consumer.
Isn't there also a, quote, cost of Ontario producing way more electricity at a lot of times and having to sell it into the grid at a loss?
Yeah, when they, because there's generation contracts between the IESO, that's the Independent Electricity System Operator, and the various generators, guaranteeing them a minimum price for the power they put on the grid. If the open market doesn't give them that price, then we as consumers top them up to that price. And that is the rate that OPG has just asked to be increased, their contracted rate. And
so that one's still to come?
Exactly.
And is that one of the reasons you see rates moving up in the future as well?
Yeah, the hourly price of electricity is very depressed. It has been for some time now. And the longer it stays depressed, the more will be paid through the global adjustment charge to top them up to their contracted rates. But the real disturbing point here is that it's the peak prices of electricity that are going up. So that's businesses, small businesses that have to operate during the peak hours of the day are absorbing the lion's share of this increase.
Right. You mentioned the open market at the beginning of your conversation. We tend to think of electricity rates as very tightly tightly regulated. Explain to us where the open market is and how participants interact in that open market.
Well, Ontario has a so-called open market. It's been regulated beyond belief since it first opened. But the generators all bid into the power pool each hour with their capacity. They stack the bids from lowest to highest, and whatever the bids needed to meet the demand that hour is what's accepted. So as demands increase, the price goes up, and as demands fall, the price goes down. But because we have these fixed price contracts with all of the generators, we top them up. So it's an open market, so to speak, but we do end up paying the contracted rates in the long run.
Okay, John, thanks a great deal for joining us and taking us through that complicated issue. John Kiemele is a Senior Natural Gas and Electricity Analyst at Enpro International. He joined us here in Toronto.